So this fanfiction idea was actually voted upon in the midst of another poll on Patreon, which again, if you haven't already, hit the link below to my Patreon. We just got a new video uploaded there, a new verses. So yeah, go check that out. And if you hit the link and if you hit the fourth tier, and you guys can, if you hit the fourth tier, you can send me personal messages to request videos for me to do here on YouTube. So if you haven't already, go check that out. So yeah, so let's go through the poll real quick and talk about, like, because this one, the fanfiction ideas were all AU ideas. And yeah, so we're just going to go through a few of them right now. So the 4 that were there were Gravity Falls Aquaman, which got none of the votes, Batman and Avatar, which got 3 votes, Owl House and My Hero Academia, and these are all AU stories, so it would be a Batman Avatar AU, and you guys know that what Batman AU it would be. And but the one that won by 1 vote over the others was Spider-Man and Randy Cunningham, that AU, which makes sense because this was coming out. We were still coming from the No Way Home kind of thing. So yeah, so we're going to talk about a Randy Cunningham Spider-Man AU. So in this story, Randy Cunningham is living with his parents, and he's not the ninja, of course. So while on a field trip to McFist Labs, he's basically, like, the whole thing is that the school is going to be able to see a private exhibition by a brilliant scientist, Dr. Willem Viceroy. However, the experiment involves tampering with a radioactive cell, and it goes haywire and busts a lot of the lab equipment, including one in dealing with spiders, like one of the experiments that Viceroy was working with in dealing with spiders. And one of those spiders, you can imagine, bites Randy, and it does change him. And of course, like, the first thing he does, rather than hide it from everybody, he's like, when he starts learning about his spider powers, he goes right to Howard and is like, dude, thwip. Well, obviously, he doesn't have the organic webbing, but he's like, he crawls on the walls, and they're like, holy shit, are you possessed? I don't know. Are you, like, gonna turn into a spider person? I don't know. Are you, like, Howard's, like, throwing out all the questions, like, are you gonna, like, mutate into a man spider, or, like, are you going to, like, drink people? And he's like, no, I don't know. Don't put that image in my head. Also, the other thing is that this Randy is a little more smarter. He's like his parents kind of get on him because they know he's actually, like, in his younger years when he was in middle school, he was really good at chemistry, and he was a top student in science. So he is smarter. He's just not applying himself to anything. So that's kind of the drawback, is that this is still Randy, but he's just a little bit smarter than we know him to be. Meanwhile, McFist's accident caused Willem's little safety harness, those 4 little tentacles, to get bonded to his body. And yes, Viceroy is Dr. Octopus in this continuity. And McFist is like, oh, this is really cool. He didn't cause the accident, but McFist did lose his arm, and the radiation did cause another, like, a gas leak for his other Goblin serum. And it causes, so McFist is Green Goblin. He isn't Green Goblin yet, but he does have Viceroy as Dr. Octopus now. And McFist does learn about a spider-like being on the news who's, like, showing off all of his, like, cool abilities. And because Randy's basically, like, Howard tells Randy, you can make $1 million, being, like, is like an acrobat, or, like, showing yourself on TV, kind of like Peter did in the first few issues of Spider-Man. Of course, he does all this, but unfortunately, what happens during one talk show, there's a robbery, and Randy doesn't do anything. That thief runs off, tries to steal his parents' car, and his parents are both shot dead by the thief. So Randy's left, now in the care of the Wienerman family, and the last he just remembers with great power comes great responsibility, and becomes basically becomes Spider-Man. So let's talk about some of the other changes here. Like I said, Viceroy is Dr. Octopus. But as for other villains, so who becomes other villains in this story? I'm sure you're all wondering that big thing. Who becomes who? So starting off, Bash becomes the Rhino. Yeah, McFist is like, I'm going to use my stepson as a test subject. It's not like he's going to be like, it's not a Harry Osborn thing. It's more of a, I'm going to make my stepson and have him wear this exo armor to test Spider-Man. So he becomes the Rhino. So Bash becomes the Rhino. As for others, you have who else was there? Like Bucky becomes Electro. Bucky becomes Electro in this story. Catfish is actually a fun one. I had a lot of fun making some changes, because here Spider-Man does encounter Catfish Boo-Ray, but it's later discovered by McFist. He basically grabs Catfish and he's like, I find it funny that your name is Catfish Boo-Ray, the most stereotypical Louisiana name ever. When it's funny because you don't come from America, you're from Russia. Isn't that right, Sergey? So yes, Catfish Boo-Ray is Kraven the Hunter in this continuity. He was a Russian, in this continuity, he was a ex-member of the KGB who laundered money away from who stole money from the government and was kind of using it to pay money he was laundering money to other government powers, and the Kremlin didn't like that, so he took off, changed his identity, changed everything, faked his death, and became Catfish Boo-Ray to live out in Norrisville as like a fake fucking, New Orleans Cajun bum. So he went hard on the hiding himself. But yeah, he becomes Kraven the Hunter because Hannibal tells him, you either hunt Spider-Man for me, or I'm going to tell the Kremlin where you are. So that's kind of what they're doing. That's kind of what they're doing. Like, that's kind of the idea. As for others, Dr. Driscoll, Miss Driscoll, becomes the Lizard in this continuity, where in here it was an experiment gone wrong that cost her both her arm and her husband. And she believes using, they were testing reptile venom, and snake bit him. He got cocky and got bit by a snake. It killed him, and also she was trying to wrangle snakes too. She got bit. It got necrotic. She had to cut her arm off, and essentially she's been obsessed with reptiles. Now, what's different about Driscoll's lizard form is that she's actually tested DNA with a Komodo dragon. So she actually has like a venomous bite to her. That when Spider-Man gets bit, he gets infected with all that like venomous bacteria that's like killing him from the inside. So yeah, there's more of a more savage version of the lizard. Yeah. So there you go, guys. That's just a few ideas I wanted to throw out there for this Spider-Man AU. I do want to come back to this with a little more thought out. This was more like, hey, here's the general idea. I thought it would be kind of fun to play with. So you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think of this Randy Cunningham Spider-Man AU? Do you guys like it, hate it? And what other characters could you see as Spider-Man villains? Also, just going to say it, Teresa's Gwen Stacy, Heidi's Mary Jane. Kind of see what happens. Yeah, so, yeah. If you haven't already, like I said, this was a poll from Patreon, so I hope you all enjoyed this. I want to thank everyone for voting on that, who has. And, yeah, this was a lot of fun to do. I know this was a little shorter, but like I said, I do think I'm going to come back to this later on with more ideas for it. This was more like, hey, here's the general idea for it. Here's the general idea for some of the villains. So there you go. But other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the multiverse.